Hi. Cool. We'll give it a few minutes maybe until there's some more people.
The link that's in the that you need to mute. Oh, okay. Turn the volume down. We made that. The link that was in the about page was not working, but the one in the discussion is for some reason.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it'd be interesting to know which ones everyone's used.
The other one it's the one that I've mostly sent to people, goes to probably the old scheduled Zoom event.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, it came up from the 7th and I was like, why isn't it working?
Yeah. Hello. My housemates are all here as well, so just in case you get any questions from below. Yeah. How's it going? Where are you at the moment? Where are you based?
Hi. Bye.
He's interested.
You're just interested. Yeah, I'm just sort of squatting near some of the camps, like near Tring. That we're going to be moving soon. That should be exciting times.
Nice. Cool.
Yeah, it's been weird, like being on the camps all summer and then like not being there for winter, and just like you go back to visit and like all of the trees are just different and everything, like this different vibe and like a different crowd and everything.
Yeah. Are there many people down there for the winter?
Obviously less than summer, like over summer, especially this year, because of like everyone having like the freedom, like the furlough scheme, like to just go to like the camps for the summer. Yeah, like a lot less people in the winter, but yeah, like skeleton crew basically.
Yeah. Should we give it another 2 minutes till 5 past and then?
Yeah, absolutely. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, good.
Yeah, good. Getting through lockdown.
Yeah, lockdown round 2.
Yeah, it's a lot colder this time.
Yeah, it is. Like, I guess at least it's not like, oh, I wish I could be outside in these sunny days, because it's not fucking sunny anymore.
Yeah, yeah. I think living in a tree house at the moment would be quite difficult.
Oh, it wasn't particularly pleasant. Like when it was like just before the eviction, it was like September, and it was quite rainy, like continuously. You just didn't have time to like go and dry your stuff out in between. Like, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely wouldn't be drying anything out. Cool. Yeah. So yeah, let's just get started. I think if anyone pops in, they can pop in. But yeah, thanks everyone who's come to listen to Goldilocks speak. I don't know who's come from where, but Kirkstall Valley Farm and the Roots Project are kind of the collaborators in bringing this together. So there is a link for a crowdfunder to raise money for migrants and refugees in the chat, if you can, at the end, if you want to, or if you want to share that with anyone who'd be interested. Yeah, so I guess first question for Goldilocks. Goldilocks is an activist who's been working with the HS2 camps. Maybe if you go into a bit like what HS2 are doing and who they are.
Yeah, I guess I can talk about like, I sort of introduce myself and then talk a little bit about HS2. I don't know, I've kind of like written some notes up, so I wanted to throw me off to like follow those. But so I want to talk about first like how HS2 like describes itself, because I feel like if anyone's heard of HS2 before, it's probably been on like BBC News, right, or like something like that, where it's been like their kind of angle on it. So HS2 describes itself as like this green solution to like all the economic imbalances that we have between like the north and the south of the country. So it's a state-funded infrastructure project, and it's actually the biggest infrastructure project that's happening in Europe. So HS2 stands for High Speed 2. So it's the second high-speed train line in this country, and it's supposed to connect London to Birmingham in its like first phase of works, which is a phase of works that's happening at the moment. And then it's going to go like up north, and it's going to connect up to Leeds and Manchester and to some airports, and then like further on to like Crewe and like possibly Glasgow. But it's currently looking like things might like be cancelled, hopefully, fingers crossed. So construction and destruction works have already begun for phase 1. HS2 has been sold as this like eco-friendly, like progressive means of transport. It's going to like fix all of our problems, and like, I don't know, it's going to make less cars happen on the road, and people are going to fly places less, despite the fact that it's also connecting up like airports as well on its way. Claims to be creating jobs. That's one of their biggest selling points, but like we've got to think about like the cost of that. Like no matter how sustainable and how progressive it is, like it basically is just pushing this idea of like endless economic growth, and like always making sure that people are like occupied and working hard, and like, I don't know, it kind of really comes back to like, I don't know, just a lot of like bad ideas around capitalism and what people should be doing with their time. The first kind of, I guess when the first train lines were built in this country, they cut loads and loads of trees down to build the sleepers. And we're kind of seeing that destruction kind of mirrored and sort of continued by HS2, now like felling loads of woodlands to like make way for this line. I guess I can talk a little bit later about like the kind of economic and the ecological and like the human costs of things when it comes up.
Yeah, cool. How did you get involved in it?
So I used to live in Leeds. I did some uni there, and then like one of my friends was on the camps in like January, December last year, and like I was seeing all this destruction sort of happen. Like they did like a lot of live streams on Facebook and like a lot of like outreach stuff like online, and just kind of they dropped me a message to be like, "There's something happening. Like it would be really cool if you come and support." So I went down. I was like just planning to like go and visit for like a few days to like Harville Road camp, which is one of the camps just outside London. Actually in Boris Johnson's constituency, and I went there for a few days, and that was January last year. Says my speaker's not working, but can people hear me okay? Cool. I might just not be able to hear you back. Yeah, and I just kind of fell in love with like, especially like the community there, and like the really beautiful area that it was at the time before HS2 kind of moved in. The Harville Road camp now, like you used to be able to like walk from like the road camp all the way like to one of the other camps like at Denham, and now like everything is like boxed off, everything's got like fencing around it, everything's been cleared or like felled or like just like not made, like not accessible to the public anymore. There's like 2 lakes, and you used to be able to like walk around like the whole of both of them, and now you just can't. Like, and for people in that area, like that is like kind of just outside London, and like where people would go to like just kind of hang out and have some time in nature, and that's just been like completely like taken away from people. I kind of moved onto the campaign full time outside lockdown. I was very lucky to like have like be working in a bar for it to be closed, and me to be like, right, if I'm going to be locked down somewhere, I might as well go and do it like with something like with people I love, and like go and do this thing, and kind of had the kind of flexibility to kind of decide whether I was going to like stay there forever or not. And yeah, I kind of decided to stay. Yeah, that's kind of how I got involved, just through like kind of word of mouth. It's really difficult to kind of know about these things unless you know people kind of in the circles, and I think we need to work like better outreach like as a campaign, like yeah.
Are most people in the same boat then? They've just heard through word of mouth, or
a lot of people, yeah, or like they're from other campaigns, or like they live in like the kind of squatters scene. Everything's very transient, like, which hasn't really changed during lockdown, like, which is, I don't know, make of it what you will, but that's just like a way of life for some people. A lot of people heard about what's going on like through XR and like through HS2 Rebellion and these kind of like other little groups that are like kind of like focusing on like the single issue, or like a lot of locals get involved, obviously, because it's right on their doorstep, and they're like, what the fuck is happening out there? Like, particularly like around like the Calvert, Steeple Claydon camps area, there's like a really strong like community kind of resistance against HS2. Like the direct action side of it that I'm involved with has only been going for like the past 3 years, and we often don't really give enough credit to like this is a 10-year long campaign, and people have been having like their lives ruined for like 10 years, and that they did a lot of the groundwork before we were even there. Like especially Calvert, like there's HS2 had plans to go like through people's gardens and like take houses away from people, and the locals kind of rose up and said like, nah, like you're not doing that. But yeah, I just want to kind of highlight that they also exist.
Yeah, how like what's the main like focus been for activists fighting that? Like how have they been going about it? Is it just mainly like taking over the land, or have there been many like legal disputes too?
I guess like so far it's been a lot about like the ecology that's being destroyed and about the biodiversity loss. So let me just get the exact numbers up so that I don't say the wrong thing. But it's going to destroy 108 ancient woodlands, 33 sites of scientific interest, nearly 700 wildlife sites, 5 internationally designated wildlife sites, loads of big conservation projects that are happening. So a lot of the focus has been like about the ecological damage that's being caused. And so a lot of like the kind of narrative so far has been like, you know, there's people and they're going to go into the woods and they're going to live there and they're going to wait for eviction and they're going to save the trees. And that's what people are passionate about. Like, if that's what people are passionate about, then that's really important that we do that. But this is like about a wider network of problems. So I could just hear my voice echoing downstairs. It's really funny. There's people in my house listening to this. But yeah, like so far it's been very much like the kind of tree defender sort of side of things. But I guess like some people are more concerned about like that this isn't a good use of like taxpayers' money, and like particularly like when the NHS is suffering and like this project is costing what it would cost to build like 300 hospitals. Like that's also a concern that people have. Also like about how like communities didn't really get a say in this. Like this wasn't democratically decided. Like it's a huge chunk of money. It's a huge chunk of like people's taxes, and they just haven't got a say. And kind of it's very authoritarian of HS2 to kind of come in and be like, no, we're going to build this train line and you're going to work for us and we're going to take what we want. There's been like a lot of talk recently about like how this isn't just about a railway, and I think there's some really like cool things that we could explore there, like loads of other like movements going on, and a lot of like the people building these things are the same people, or like the people who like are being exploited are the same people. And I don't know, we just, yeah, solidarity is really important with those campaigns, and it's something that I like to think a lot more about, and like tying all these things together. Something I guess we can talk about in terms of like the pandemic, like HS2 have continued to like work through that, and it's been really really quite damaging for like communities that are like especially vulnerable. Like people in the construction industry have had like the highest rates of COVID because they've been forced to like go to work without proper PPE and being allowed to socially distance. And I don't like how HS2 just treats its workers as like disposable, and they're like, oh, we need to continue to do this amazing project and it's going to fix all of our problems even though we're the ones perpetuating them in the first place. Yeah.
Yeah, have you seen, because I've seen some videos from the camps where I think it's bailiffs who've not been COVID, not been paying attention to any of the rules around COVID, especially like towards the start of the pandemic. How has that kind of affected you guys? Has it had an effect on like anyone getting COVID?
I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm a COVID denier or anything, but we haven't really had like until it got to winter, like there wasn't really like COVID wasn't really a thing on the camps. So it was kind of like, I don't know, like, yeah, evictions were still happening and stuff and people were being left with nowhere to go, but it's not like the people who were there were kind of either there out of choice or like they knew that they had other places to go. And like it hasn't, like COVID hasn't really affected how much work HS2 has done. And like we're really lucky to have not caught COVID from like bailiffs and stuff who have been traveling all over the country evicting people, even though that's something that we were talking about at the time and how unsafe it felt. Like I imagine that there being a pandemic has put people off coming here, but it's also like, I don't know, I wouldn't be here if that hadn't happened in a weird sort of way. Yeah, like it's not just like squats that protesters have made or like tree houses and stuff that are being evicted like during the pandemic as well. It's like people who are being like kicked out of like their homes and their farms and like getting their businesses taken away, like their source of income taken away, and they're not getting like compensation, and they're not being able to like go and live somewhere else because like a lot of like, so say you don't get as much money to go and buy a new building, you may only be able to rent a place, and it's really difficult to rent houses at the moment because there's a pandemic and estate agents are being a bit like, that's not really quite on, or like being able to like move in with family who are also vulnerable. Like it's this kind of knock-on effect that HS2 is having. That's the thing, like they have these things called compulsory purchase orders, so they can just like buy land off of people, but the people don't get a say in it, and they also don't get a say in how much money they get given or when they get given. And there's like, you're not allowed to like do all these things, like you're not allowed to go to the press, you're not allowed to talk to protesters, you're not allowed to have protesters on your land, you're not allowed to like talk to like certain people or like drive through your own driveway at certain times because HS2 are there. And it's just really, really bad that people are kind of being like blackmailed into doing like what HS2 wants them to do. And yeah, like none of that has stopped during the pandemic. There's been absolutely no sympathy for anyone really. It almost feels like they're maybe accelerating works because like there's less resistance happening.
Yeah. Has like, which laws exactly have been put into play, or have they been specifically tailored for HS2 and what they're doing?
So there's like a piece of legislation called Schedule 17, which is basically the thing that allows HS2 to go ahead. So like included in that is like all of the compulsory purchases and temporary purchases, which is like when they take a piece of land and then they don't pay you for it and then you get it back in like X amount of years. So like there's, for an example, like one farmer he's like in his 70s, he's had his land taken off of him, he's going to get it back in 17 years time, and it's like probably won't be around in that time like to even see the outcome of this. And it, like the state that they give it back to you in is very like up to them as well. Like they could cut everything down or like turn it to mud and whatever. Sorry, this is just a tangent. So yeah, there's this piece of legislation called Schedule 17, and that also means that HS2 can like break like loads of environmental protection laws as well, because it's deemed like necessary for the project and for the greater good and all this. Also, like I guess in terms of what they're trying to push on protesters, it would be things like injunctions, which is like a piece of law that a private company can buy, and that then means that they can like kind of say, okay, there's this set of rules that people have to follow, and if you don't do those, we're going to put you in prison or we're going to fine you like loads and loads of money. Might talk a little bit more about that later if I want to talk, if you wanted me to talk about trespass and stuff as well. But yeah, that's another thing they do. Things that people have been like charged with for protesting, things like Section 241, which is just like, oh, it's like a trade unions act, and it's like, oh, you've like stopped works, how dare you, or things like aggravated trespass or like just criminal damage and things like whatever. Yeah, I mean in terms of like policing and stuff, like and actually enforcing the laws, like the police basically listen to what HS2 tell them to do, because HS2 have given them loads of money and they're all working together because it's all the same state.
Yeah, so like have there been any authorities who've kind of backed what you guys are doing and supported you through like legal trials or anything, like, because I know there's been like no media coverage of what's going on, but anyone who's been like pushing for it within like higher structure?
I know that Chris Packham's tried to take HS2 to court to no avail, because like the court is on the side with HS2. I know that when we've been in court for like injunction cases before against HS2, HS2 have like handpicked the judges that have overseen that case, because they deemed like the 3 or 4 judges that were proposed before were like too sympathetic to protesters. We've had like a good barrister who gave us some good advice, and he does a lot of things for like other like sort of things like this, like squatters, other like protest occupations, like environmental protesters. I don't like, there's not really a lot going on the legal side. I know there's like a petition happening at the minute that's got like thousands and thousands of signatures, and hopefully that means Parliament will debate maybe postponing or cancelling HS2. But yeah, I don't know too much about that. It's not really something that like my activism involves, I guess.
Yeah, like within your activism then, what have you kind of like skill wise like gained, and what's been since like joining the camps?
I guess being on camps, like all the practical skills that come with that, like building things, something that I never really thought I'd do. It's quite like, I don't know, like spending not a lot of time outdoors in the past few years, you kind of lose that confidence to go out and do stuff like that. Like learning to climb has been really freeing as well. Like, I don't know, you can do that now. It's pretty fun. Also like just learning how to like live in communities and like build communal spaces from like the ground up and make decisions together. Like learning how to like communicate with other people as well, like in ways that you generally don't really do outside of this. Like everything feels like we actually take people's like feelings and stuff into consideration a lot of the time, and think about the space around us and like what impact we have on the environment. A lot of like skill shares and stuff do happen on the campaign, like Crackley Camp, which is like up near like Kenilworth, like more to the northern end of the line. Like over summer, like there was lots of people going there for the first time and doing like workshops and skill shares, and like, you know, like learning your rights, or like doing like non-violent communication, like how to like tie certain knots and things, or like how to cook for big groups. And like, yeah, I guess all of these things that are skills that you don't really get taught until you kind of put your mind to it in this sort of setting. A lot of things are like working on, like obviously people come here with like, you know, they want to do anything they can to stop HS2, and that's like a huge learning curve. Like I've seen people go from being like not really knowing what to do, and then really like running with like ecology work and stuff like that, and like doing all the research themselves, and like kind of like talking to other people and like learning what they can to do that, or like, yeah, like kind of reading up on all the legal side of it, or like how you can defend yourself in court. And like, I know there's such a broad list of things to do. yeah, it's really hard to like pinpoint one thing. Yeah.
Cool. I did have a question. I think it was on laws of trespass and how that kind of affects the protesters mainly.
Okay. So trespass is generally like a civil matter, and the government is trying to make it like a criminal act. But you know, let's keep it civil, guys. So trespass is like when you go into someone else's land without their permission. It's like if you're out hiking and you go into someone's field and like, or if you're like living in an empty building or something like that, is all like encompassed in like what trespass means. Like if you go into someone's land and the owner can like ask you to leave, and if you don't do that, then like whatever, like they've just asked you to leave. It's a civil thing. As long as you're not like disrupting what they're doing, then like it's still civil. Like if you start disrupting it, that's when it becomes aggravated trespass, and that's when it becomes like a criminal matter. So for example, like the postman isn't trespassing because when they come into your garden, like it's kind of like they're there to do a job, and like you kind of, there's this somewhat informed, somewhat like kind of like it's allowed to happen. So HS2 like use like the civil injunctions to stop their work being disruptive, which is basically like I said, like, there's this list of rules, and a lot of them would be like, you're not allowed to trespass, or like you're not allowed to stand in front of the gate, and you're not allowed to trespass on the land. And that basically means that if you get caught doing those things, then they can take you to court over it, or you can be arrested. There's been like a case like last year where someone allegedly broke an injunction like 17 times, and HS2 took him to court, and they wanted to like put him in prison for like 2 years, and like he basically got away with like quite, I think he got like a suspended sentence. So that's, you know, in terms of like either that or like going to prison, that's like kind of the less harsh end of it. I don't know. I think also because it's very much painted as like, you know, it's just trespass, it's just being peaceful, it's just trying to defend things, but and like protect the trees and like nature. But yeah, it very much feels like the kind of issue of trespass does come up a lot in these discussions, and it kind of brings up questions of like, who does this belong to, like who gets the right to make decisions about it, especially like untouched bits of woodland, like who gets the right to be there, who should it be preserved for, and kind of thinking about like maybe like protecting it for ourselves or for future generations is like really important to some people. In terms of like how it affects protesters, like yeah, you're living on like sites that could be evicted because it's considered trespass. So like the bailiffs will come in and they'll be like, oh, you're trespassing, and it's like, no, you're trespassing, like you've just walked into our home, like
Yeah. What is like, going back to like the bit about you kind of said like, oh, some people think it's just like protecting trees and stuff. What would the environmental like repercussions of everything be in the long term for those people who do want to like look after the land for like future generations?
So I guess what I'm going to talk a little bit about like what HS2 are doing in terms of like mitigating the damage they're doing, and then we'll kind of go from there, I guess. So like they're doing really bad mitigation, like they're building habitats in places where those habitats have never existed. For example, like near Jones Hill, they want to build like a pond, and it's like there's no ponds near Jones Hill, like what animals are going to live or like migrate to that pond? They've often like tried to plant trees, but then they say that they can't afford to water them, but they then also happen to be able to afford security to stop the activists from watering them. And those trees, like they often plant like the same type of trees, which means if one of those trees gets sick, then they'll like all die. Or like planting trees that aren't like suited to that environments and stuff. Like they basically just kind of bulldoze anything in their way. Like Calvert Jubilee was like a really beautiful space. Like I spent a few weeks, like helped set up the camp there, and then spent like a few weeks living there. It's just so like beautiful, like these big lakes and like loads of really ancient oaks around it, and like reeds and stuff, and loads of birds. And it would be like where birds would like stop off when like their migrations overseas and stuff. It was just like a really nice area, and especially during lockdown, like that reserve was like a lifeline for people. Like that was the only way of like going outdoors or like being in nature and being able to like socially distance from people. I was there like the night before we took the camp, and there was a lady like who traveled from quite far to go and see it before she knew it was going to be destroyed, and she was telling us like she used to like go like looking for like these like rare orchids there, and that there was like ancient grasslands because of like, you could tell they were ancient because of like how the ants had like built their nest there. Other things HS2 do is like they put down this like netting over like badger sets, so badgers like can't go back to their sets once they've left, and then they have to like leave. You can only do that at like certain times of year. So it's kind of like a game with the activists to try and like stop them putting that netting down or like disrupt that work before it's like time for them to be able to fill that bit of woodland. other things they've done before is like actually putting like concrete and stuff down badger sets, which has been really awful to see. Or with like the bat roosts and stuff, they like put all this like wire netting like around some of the trees so the bats couldn't get back in or get out. At Jones Hill, we knew that we had like the Barberstall bats in the wood, and HS2 knew which trees they were in, and they've shone like floodlights on them to stop like the bats being able to like rest and stuff. It's pretty like kind of underhand, like sneaky tactics to try and stop it happening, and like to try and say like, oh, there's no bats here. Like, they've been like putting up bat boxes in people's houses and stuff, and to try and like mitigate for that, but it's not the same as like their natural habitat. I was actually talking to I got arrested, and the lady who arrested me like was telling me that like she'd lost her house to HS2, and that they used to like, we just stood outside the police station like just chatting for fucking hours, and like she was telling me that HS2 used to like come to her house and like pretend to do bat surveys there, because the people that they'd hired to do it didn't actually know how to do them, and they'd like just give her like thousands of pounds for like just coming and pretending to do these surveys at her house, so like before it was taken off of her. And it's so fucked like that they're trying to like that they could get away with that, like especially like doing that to the police, and the police weren't like, hang on, like you shouldn't be doing this. They just kind of took the money. But yeah, like that's kind of like a brief overview of like what HS2 are doing like to the kind of ecological destruction. Yeah, on a like more personal level, like there was these things called like gliss, which are like these like large dormice, and they live in all of the beech trees around Tring because someone let them out, and they're just this invasive species, but they're so cute. They're just these big dormice, and I had them in my treehouse, and there was like 2 big nests, and they would keep me up all night and like steal my food and break into everything. But then at the end of the day, like they were so adorable, and I feel really bad that they were like made homeless like during that eviction, because it was like, oh, they're so cute. Yeah, it's just kind of sad to see like the animals dying. It's not great.
Yeah, no. Do you think like any actual ecologists were working or are working like with HS2?
HS2 have like an ecology course school thing. I'm not really too sure. I've not looked that much into it. I would quite like to a bit more, but often ecologists will show up who aren't trained properly, or like they'll show up and be disguised as security because they know that protesters will like berate them about how much actual ecology knowledge they actually know. Some of them showed up at Jones Hill, and we told them like, we know where the badger sets are, like we've done the surveys, like you don't need to come into the wood. Like they tried to come into the wood, they like would like looking at like just their way of like looking at like badger sets was just like sticking a stick down it and being like, oh, this one doesn't have badgers in it. It's like, if you're a good ecologist, you would know it doesn't have badgers in based on the fact that the signs around it show that it hasn't been touched for a while, because there's leaves in it and there's like stuff like this. Like they don't know their stuff, and like their way of like actually mitigating that damage is just not up to the standards that you would need to if you were gonna do a project like this at all. Like, I mean, it's happening anyway, so you might as well try, I guess, but they just haven't really done that. Other things like about like HS2 that they probably should have realized is like they made like an Instagram post about how they were doing so many good things for adders, but just the fact that they're building a train line that's going like straight through the middle of England is just going to divide all of the adder territories in half. And because of issues that adders have had with this happening in the past, with like building roads and building like things like that, like it already means that adders are really suffering, and like often like end up interbreeding with like their own like families and stuff, and that like dividing the country in half of the train line is just going to make that like 10 times worse. And a good ecologist would like give this like the red flag, and that they've done that time and again, and HS2 just haven't listened. Like the Woodland Trust and like various other organizations have been like, HS2 bad, and no, like HS2 just haven't taken that on board.
Yeah, that's like just awful.
Yeah. Train lines are actually really bad for animals as well. There's like I think it's a Spanish study that showed that train lines kill about 36, like especially high-speed trains, kill about 36 animals per kilometer. So if that was applied to HS2, it would be about like 20,000 animals being killed on the line every year.
Yeah, are they going to they have no plans for like overpasses for wildlife or anything?
I don't know. Probably not, I imagine. Yeah, I don't know yes or no to that one, sorry.
What can I guess it'd be nice to open up the conversation to everyone else if people want to get involved at the moment, and then circle back if there's anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I did get sent a few questions on Instagram, but I don't know if the people who asked them are in this call, but I'm happy to like answer them anyway.
Yeah, yeah, maybe if you go through those questions, that could be quite nice.
You just cut out for a second. I didn't hear what you said. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. I said, yeah, it'd be quite nice maybe to go through the Instagram ones before opening up the conversation.
So the first question was, how do we get more folks on camps during felling season? And that was from someone I know is at one of the camps at the moment. I don't know if they're in a single, but so felling season is generally like October to like March, early spring, I think. So the question there is basically, how do we get people to stay on camps over winter? Like, it's cold, it's really grim, it's a really busy time for people, like Christmas and New Year, and especially like during the pandemic, like people don't really necessarily want to like move outdoors into a community that they don't know. Like, yeah, I can understand why that makes people like anxious and why it's pretty inaccessible as well. So like getting people onto camps is something that we can try and do. Someone said to me the other day, like, this campaign very much speaks like the language of camps, and like if something needs defending, like go build a camp there, like go build a treehouse, like build a camp, build a community or whatever, and you kind of wait for eviction, and then you wait for the felling to happen. And like the Jones Hill eviction was at the start of October, and they haven't touched like a single tree hardly. Like, they've cleared some of the undergrowth. Like, I think they might have today even only just come in with like ecologists or arborists, and like just because you're protecting one bit of land doesn't mean they're not going to fell like absolutely everything around it. Like, when they couldn't fell Jones Hill straight away, they used that contract to then go and fell like some of the oak trees nearby, and to fell like Grimstitch, which was like another woodland nearby with loads of badger sets in. Yeah, I don't know. I think how do we get people on camps? Like, the camps themselves, like, I guess building like warm, dry spaces and better infrastructure, and having places for people to like work. Like, I know there's like a few students on the campaign who are struggling because they're like, oh, I can't charge my laptop, I can't go to my lectures and stuff, and it can be quite stressful for people, especially people who can't like drive themselves like up and down the country, or like who don't like live nearby. Yeah, I don't know. I think personally, I think we just need to start thinking like a little bit bigger than camps. And like working outside of that, and like HS2 have like bought loads of buildings that are sitting empty, like hello. As well as that, like thinking a bit more like less defensively. Like, camps are very much about like defending this space, whereas like we could be like, okay, well, this, we know where all the compounds are and where all the machinery is, like, come on, we know who the people are who are working for them. Yeah, I don't know, how do we get people on camps in winter? I'm not on a camp in winter, so I probably should maybe think about what's made me not want to do that, perhaps. Yeah. Someone asked me like, what of the police interventions or interactions, police intervention on HS2 sites. So I grabbed a quote from a report by Global Diligence LLP, which was commissioned by a group called Not One More. And the report looks at how the UK complies with international like civil and political rights things. And the report claims that the British police have systematically violated protesters' rights under international law, targeted individuals based on gender and disability. A pattern of behaviour by the police is in suppressing environmental protests across the UK through unnecessary and disproportionate violence, intimidation, judicial harassment appears to be indicative of state policy to deter people from exercising their rights to assembly and expression. That's like the quote from the report. And basically it's just saying that like the police haven't treated environmental protesters well. We know that the police don't treat anybody well, but like especially like environmental protesters like have really like had this shit kicked out of them, and not just in like the past few years. Like, this has always like been a thing. It's quite, I don't know, it kind of, when the police show up to things, like everything just kind of like for me anyway, I get quite anxious because I'm like, I know that even if I'm not doing anything wrong right now, like there's still a chance that they might just walk up and decide to nick some people. Particularly Thames Valley can be like quite violent. Like, they're paid for by HS2. Like, they are the HS2 police. Like, I don't really want to be around them ever. Like and often like they will overstep like their jurisdiction. So like during the eviction at Denham, even though like we were on like the Met side of like the Metropolitan Police side of the like the river, it was Thames Valley Police who showed up. And even though it was like when they were like cutting people off the traverse over the river, like that was a thing that happened. Like, even though it was on the Met side, it was like a Thames Valley Police operation. So they're like in direct communication with HS2 and very much work for HS2, and like are like happy to collaborate with them. I don't know. I think the police are just there to like protect the state and capital and big companies because that's what they do. And so yeah, we can't expect them to be nice to us. I've been pretty lucky with my own interactions with the police because like I'm young and I'm white and able-bodied, and it's kind of like really, I don't even want to say shocking because it's kind of like you expect it now, but just how they've like treated like black and brown people on this campaign has been really horrendous. Like we've seen like people like be specifically like pointed out or like targeted or like arrested when it could have been any one of us who's like stood there. One of my friends like went, I think he's put in a complaint, and there was a Guardian article about it as well, but like having his head knelt on by the police. And like when I spoke to him about it at first, like he just kind of brushed it off and just kind of like it was treated as like, oh, that's like the normality, like that's how you're supposed to like be treated by the police. And that's just really wrong, especially when like a vast majority of the population view the police as like they're there to do good and to do good lawful things and to protect people, and that's really not the case. And it's never like an experience that I've had where that's been the case. People are often arrested for like really silly, stupid things and then given like ridiculously harsh bail conditions. So there's a set of like 4 bail conditions that people keep getting, and it basically means that you're not allowed near HS2 sites unless you like live there, and it means that you can't protest freely, and you can't like you can get arrested for like being on a footpath near where there might possibly be some HS2 works going on, which as a HS2 activist is fucking annoying. And then the actual court process means that you have these bail conditions for like a year because like it takes so long to get around to actually protesting all these ridiculous arrests in the first place. And then people often end up getting let off. Like we have like a 1 in 100 like rate for people actually being like convicted of anything, like prosecuted for like anything they've been arrested for. Yeah, like the entire like criminal justice system and how they like how the police interact with us is it just kind of comes out through how we deal with HS2. Like it's just bad. Yeah, I don't know, just the police make me angry, I think. Any other, I think there were some more questions but I can't find them, but if anyone who's watching wants to send me some questions, that'd be really cool.
Yeah, maybe if just in case quite a few people have some questions, if people type into the chat and then we can go in order of who has a question maybe. I had a question about like basically like youth and elders collaborative activism on HS2. Like what's the like kind of relationship been like between older activists and younger activists, and who's taken on what roles? Just because I'm assuming like not all of the older activists are like up in the trees and stuff, but I'm assuming they've got quite a lot of knowledge around it.
That's such an interesting question that I've never really gave that much thought. I guess it's kind of hard in my head to like divide up like right, so who do I see as like the younger activists and who I see as older activists and what they do, because everything's very mixed. Like age doesn't necessarily connote or like denote that you've got like experience, right? Like people come to this campaign and it might be their first direct action campaign and they might be like in their 50s, but there might be people like in their 50s who've been doing this like their entire lives. I guess maybe the interactions between like experienced people and like non-experienced people, like there's often like it can sometimes feel like, especially like with men and like people who are like perceived as like more masculine, like people can maybe think that they're like someone to look up to or like a leader in some way, which is really weird because like we're supposed to like like we often like find ourselves like organizing like as anarchies where everyone has a voice and everyone's kind of like equal in that, but it obviously never doesn't play out like that. We all have these little like biases in our heads and people we think like we have already like ideas about. I guess like often it can be like older people will, I don't know. I don't know. I think maybe the young people sort of stick together and then like the older people sort of like stick together, and maybe like there might be like this assumption that like maybe the older people don't want to like go and like do mad stuff and like climb trees and stuff, but often like they're the ones with like the experience as well. I don't know, it can be quite nice to like have these like kind of figures to like look up to, but then you're also still on the same like kind of level with them anyway, because like everyone has their own sort of things that they're good at or things that they need support with. Yeah, it was very strange over the summer. Like there was a lot of young people come and join the campaign, and it was like they were like really psyched to do actions, and it was kind of like, hold up, like hand people the wheel, like let them do the cool things that they want to. Like it shouldn't be for anyone to like be act like anyone's parent and be like, no, that's a bad idea, we shouldn't do that. Like if people have the energy, then let's say, like, go for it.
Thanks.
One
I
of the
think
questions.
someone's posted a question.
How do you cope with it? Something quite, I think it can be really easy to like fall really in love with no, that's a lie. I think personally for me, I struggle to really fall in love with places that I know are going to be like felled and cut down and like demolished. But then it also inevitably happens anyway, because like I really love the spaces that we make and the people that I'm with. So like Calvert, for example, like we didn't know whether we were going to be like evicted on the first night or whether the space was going to be there for weeks and weeks. And like over the time that I was there, I was like, oh my God, this is such a beautiful area. And like I haven't been back to that site since, because I'm like, I know I did once, but it was at night, so I don't really see much. But yeah, I haven't seen like the full scale of the devastation, and I don't know if I want to, because I don't know if it's just going to make me sad and if it's going to make me lose hope. But like I think I think like it is important to kind of face up to like the things that we are like trying to fight against, because it kind of puts everything that's like useful, and like then you can kind of use that anger to do whatever you want, really. I think like at Denham, like I was there like when there was still trees there, and kind of like seeing the trees like come down was really, really sad. But I was kind of like, you know, like the fact that these trees have lasted a little bit longer and they've been longer because we have been here, is, and like this whole movement is going to be like a series of losses. And I think it's really important to like not get lost in that, and actually remember the things that we're good at and the things that are positive and the things that like we're building and keeping around us and stuff. Yeah. I guess sometimes getting a bit of time away, and like I went to Leeds recently and I was like, oh my God, it's so grey and horrible here. But that was quite nice, because then I could come back and be like, oh, I remember I like green things. Like that's kind of cool.
I think there's another question.
What are your arguments against the government's reasons for building HS2 in the first place, i.e. increasing economy, creating jobs, connecting the north and the south? Do you think these things will actually happen? I did talk a little bit about this at the start, like how HS2 describes itself, and I guess I could go through and unpick every argument they make, but there's websites for that already. The stophs2.org website has loads of like debunking things on there. It's really cool. But I guess, no, I don't think these things will happen, especially now that there's a pandemic and no one's taking the train anyway, and everyone's remembered that Zoom exists. Like, I can't imagine all of these people here in front of me now, like being in the same room at the same time, but we have the internet, so it doesn't need to be like that, right? I think the kind of north-south divide isn't going to be fixed by an expensive train line that only goes to Birmingham. I don't see that happening. I don't see it happening under the governments that have backed HS2. I don't really see it happening under any government that exists as we know it. Increasing economy, like what does that mean? Like more money for rich people, and like we'll probably still have to pay taxes, and they won't. Yeah, I just can't see HS2 being a solution to that. I don't know that much about like the actual facts and figures for like the money side of it, but I know people have been like, well, it's actually not economically viable, and this is how much of a ticket it's going to cost, and all of the pricings that they've done for it, and how much money it's going to generate for the government, despite the fact that HS2 Limited is like technically like a private company, despite being like state managed and state funded. Like it will end up being a private company, like it will get sold off to someone. Yeah, all of the pricings that HS2 have done are based on the fact that every train that ever runs and leaves that station runs on time and is full of people, which is just never going to be a thing again now that there's a pandemic and we're going to have to like keep distancing each other from each other for years. The train line is going to be finished in fucking like 17 years time, hopefully, if no one delays it too much, but can't promise anything on that. I think in 17 years time it won't be necessary. Like it's train line, like the technology that was used to design it like even 10 years ago, like isn't going to be relevant anymore, and it's just not going to be necessary. Like it's not going to fix the economy, and I don't think creating jobs for the sake of creating jobs is going to fix the economy. It's just going to like waste people's time, really. Okay. The next question below is, do we need more elders? As a side comment, but I'd like to ask if you agree that we have been crippled by COVID because we've not been able to do actual outreach, village hall talks, meet and greets, etc. In past campaigns, anti-fracking, Sheffield trees, etc., they would hold tea and coffee meetings at the high street. Have you got any ideas of how we can combat this? Don't worry, I don't have a clue either. Also good to see you, Bidit. It's really lovely to see you last week and hang out. Hi. Yeah, sending lots of love. Do we need more elders? Like, absolutely. Like, everyone, like, the more people, the better. And whether that's young people or old people, like, it's still people. I think that, yeah, doing actual outreach on the high street is something that's quite familiar for a lot of people. And so, like, I don't know, like, it's good to do that because it's something that people, like, don't feel as alienated from. Whereas, like, I don't know, like, there's people on the high street who would never dream in their lives of coming and moving to camp with crusties and eating vegan food, but like they might want to take a flyer off you on a high street and come to a meeting or go to talk to their parish council or whatever. All of those things are important, and like if it's what gets people to like start thinking about these big ideas of like self-organization and how they can make changes, then that's important. I think a lot of that work was done like before the direct action campaign side of like the anti-HS2 campaign started. And I think maybe it's kind of dropped down a little bit, but without that work being done in the first place, I'm not sure if people would have like picked up like the work and started like building camps and stuff so much. Yeah, I'd love to see what the anti-fracking campaign kind of, I don't know, I'd love to hear what you think about that and how it worked. That'd be interesting chat to have. Yeah, I think also like we often think about, what I'm trying to say. So we often, when we do things on this campaign, it's always about stopping HS2. It's always about like being as much of a nuisance as possible. Like from where I see it, like trying to stop HS2 and be very firm and very like we're gonna stop it. But actually, like not communities don't necessarily need that. Like if someone's grieving because they've just lost like their only access to like nature, then they need like someone to support them through that. And that's what community is as well. And that's what outreach should be for. And it's like building networks between communities. Even if people don't come and move to camps and like start stopping HS2, if it means that two like people in a village meet up and have a cup of tea and like decide to get an allotment or something, or do anything else that's not organizing against HS2, like that's still important. And I guess we can kind of facilitate doing that in some way, then that's really cool. I don't know. What can someone who can't go to the camps do to support the whole of HS2? Doing things like this, coming to these talks is really important because it means that we can share what we know from the campaign, like the camp side of things. So thank you for attending in the first place. Inviting your friends to these things as well is really important, like spreading the word as far as possible. Supporting other campaigns, like there's like I don't know where you're from, but there's loads and loads of things like this happening all around the country and all around the world, and building like these kind of bigger like awarenesses and bigger networks of things that are happening is really important. And like in Leeds at the moment, there's like the Armley Trees campaign, so network where I want to fell some trees in Armley, and there's been someone trying to organize people to combat that for like years and hasn't really gotten anywhere. So if you really want to do something, then maybe get in touch with them. There's also things like the Stonehenge Action Group and camp that have been set up. Like there's protests happening against Leeds Bradford Airport. There's a group called Galba, which is group against Leeds Bradford Airport, who are like working with XR Leeds to do some really cool stuff. There's coal mines that are being built. I'd say built, being dug and being expanded, and on like needs support. Like if you can't get to these camps, the means as well. Other things is like the kind of typical, like we have a fundraiser. I don't know what the current centralized fundraiser link is. If anyone has that, please put it in the chat. But yeah, like money donations, things like that. Doing artwork and stuff and like sharing about it online, or like doing bits of research or bits of writing. There's an amazing website called tnar.com, which stands for This Is Not About a Railway, and they're like trying to like gather bits of work or bits of writing, art, rants, comics and things from like basically anyone who wants to speak or like share something. And it doesn't necessarily have to be about HS2. It doesn't necessarily have to be like directly related to this, but like you could maybe write some things for that if you're like, I don't know, things like music and poetry as well, like really help to like, I don't know, just make the world a better place. And that's kind of what this is a part of as well. But yeah, maybe consider like having a read of that and like thinking if you want to write anything. Yeah, petitions and stuff sometimes help, writing to MPs, but think it was something that Swampy said in the 90s. He was like, oh, like he's talking to the BBC like after an eviction. He was like, well, you know, like we've got to do this sort of stuff because like I don't think you'd be here if it wasn't for me doing this. Like if I'd written to my MP, you wouldn't have come along with your cameras today. Like I don't think so. Yeah. Why is the government pushing ahead with HS2 when we have successfully conducted business across the country without traveling? Why can't they stop it going ahead? That's the first part of the question. I think I've mostly covered this, but I guess at this point it's just a vanity project, and like it's just kind of like peak, like, oh, this amazing thing that we're going to build, even though we don't have to. It's the same reason that like rich people have lawns. It's because they can have like unproductive land, or they can do something pointless because they can. And also, like, have you ever tried to tell a Tory like not to do something? They just want to do it more, like they're just children. What can we do to stop HS2 from our sofas? Kind of already covered this a little bit. I'm happy to like put some links to other cool stuff in the chat at the end of this. It might be helpful for people to like get involved. Also, like organizing actions like in your own town or city, even if you can't come to like the camps, is really important. Are you in camp right now, and how's it been with COVID? I'm not in a camp right now, in a squat instead, which is quite nice because it's like a little bit warmer and a little bit drier sometimes. And we have had like some concerns with COVID. Obviously now that it's winter, like everyone's like sat a lot closer together and being indoors a little bit more, and it's a bit like riskier, especially with like the other strain, and like there being like another wave of it happening and stuff, and like businesses being like open and then closed again. And over the summer it wasn't that much of a worry, as I think maybe we should have taken it a bit more seriously, but it didn't feel like there was anyone with COVID, which is really strange to say like that. I don't remember. But yeah, like I wouldn't recommend like coming down if you've like been in contact with loads of people, or if you're like vulnerable yourself. Like it just wouldn't be particularly safe. Yeah, just ask if people do want to come down, like just try and keep your distance, like just bring a mask, like just be really sensible about it, like who you've got to go back to and who you're like hanging out with before you come down. Like you've got to remember, like these camps are people's homes, like people are in like a bubble, they're in like a household, and yeah, it's really got to be careful with that. I know Ross from Jones Hill was live streaming this morning, and he was talking about like the kind of impact on like actual HS2 workers and what risk like other like things HS2 are doing like posed to them. So there was like loads of like people coming into site, but they weren't wearing masks and they weren't keeping their distance from people in their own workplace, and it's just really fucked that like people are like being so flippant about it, and that the government's like just allowing it to happen and treating people like so disposably, like it's not on. Yeah, there was a weird period of time where like I think it was like after the eviction at Harville Road, and like their way of like just dealing with us was just screaming 2 meters and like threatening to take their masks off, and it was like who the fuck are you? It's just really bad. Like really bad practice. Do you have any kind of NVDA code of conduct when it comes to dealing with the police? So for those who don't know, NVDA stands for non-violent direct action. I'm probably not the best person to speak about this. I guess it really depends like on the parameters of like, so say that there was an action happening, it really depends on the parameters of the action that was happening and what people were comfortable with. So say there was a group of people who wanted to like organize an action, it would probably be best to like discuss whether it's going to be a non-violent action or not, or like what their plan is for dealing with the police. It doesn't feel like, I know like in some groups like Youth Strike and XR and things like that I've worked with, it's been like, okay, so we have someone who is like assigned the role of being like a police liaison, or like assigned the role of like being like a well-being go-to support person, but it doesn't really feel like that on the campaign. Like people just kind of fulfill the roles that they're comfortable with, or like if you're doing like work with your camp or like your affinity group, then like everything just kind of happens quite organically, and people kind of, I don't know, I think I have, especially like with my affinity group, like got this really like lovely bond, and like we're starting to like understand each other's like boundaries a bit more, and what people are like comfortable with in terms of like non-violence, and like how we interact with police and what support people do and don't want and stuff. But like I guess if you're like new to the campaign, like don't have expectations that everyone's gonna act the same as they have maybe in like other activist spaces. I don't know, it can be very strange to me when people like assume that other people are like cool with being around the police, or like that they want to do like only non-violent stuff, and it's very like, it just feels very strange and very like, I don't know, there's a lot to unpack there, I think. Yeah, in terms of dealing with the police, like like they'll turn up and they'll probably just be really horrible to you, and then it'll be really difficult to not be horrible back to them. And some people have more self-restraint than others. Some people think that others should have more self-restraint than they do. But yeah, like a lot of silly arrests happen because people shout at the police, but those arrests wouldn't happen if the police weren't there in the first place. So it's kind of what it comes down to. In terms of like dealing with police, like police station support wise, like there's generally always going to be someone to pick people up from the station, and we really make sure that people are like try and be looked after when that happens. Like that can be really stressful times for people, especially if it's like violent or like someone's first arrest. Like I don't know, I think it's something that I don't know. Like after the eviction, it was just nice everyone came out of court and everyone was kind of there to greet them. Yeah. This is training available for NVDA. Yeah, if people wanted to like run an NVDA training like at a camp, like I'm sure no one would be opposed to that. Like it's a tactic among other tactics, and it shouldn't be considered like more or less valuable. And I don't know, I guess it depends on the action as well. Like if you wanted to do like an action that was just going to be really fluffy and like involve loads of like families or like locals, then probably going in with balaclavas and bolt cutters wouldn't be the way to go. Like I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of striking the balance of like the purpose of the action as well. Like if it's like public facing and you want people to like say nice things about you in the newspaper, then something you've got to think about. But yeah, if anyone has any more questions, that would be good. If not, then I can maybe, I think I had a few more notes of things I wanted to talk about. I don't know if I've said them all or not. Yeah. So HS2 is planned to come all the way up to Leeds. So there's going to be like a second phase of like building starting sometime soon. I know they've started like some preemptive like works around like Hebden Bridge or something for some reason. Like, yeah, like a lot of the land they take isn't like directly on the line. But yeah, HS2 is coming up to Leeds. So like if people want to build a camp, now would be the time. Like the reason that like the evictions of like Hamby and Germany worked so well is because they had like fucking ages to build the camps and establish these communities, and like people like really kind of and stuff, like rally kind of other activists and like support for their campaign. So yeah, if you want to build a camp or like start looking at things that way, then that'd be really cool. Especially like South Leeds, like I've looked at the maps and everything just looks like it's going to be decimated. It's really bad to see. Ties in quite nicely with like, I don't know, like a lot of other movements, and like I don't know, I just feel like Leeds has a really like strong like activist network, like especially like in the time that I was there. It'd be really cool to see stuff happening that way. What was your favorite camp? Jones Hill. It's got to be. Yeah, I moved to Jones Hill in like June or July, I think, and I was like, right, I'm gonna be here for a few weeks until eviction, and then we're gonna go and do something else. And then in October, the eviction happened, and it's just like it was so lovely to like have this amazing community there throughout the summer and being like these beautiful woodlands and the Chilterns, and like war camp was like just down the road, and I could just like pop down there for the day and do some painting and like come back up and see my friends and hang out. And I think we ended up with like 11 or 12 like tree houses, and it was just like everyone was like so like you could go into someone's tree house and you could tell whose it was just on like how it's decorated, and like people like put so much like time and energy into like building that camp. And like I don't know, even when it felt like eviction was imminent, like we still did the washing up and stuff and like still like tried to like keep being people. And like yeah, it was just a really nice summer. And I don't know if like over the winter like it's a lot colder there and stuff, and the leaves aren't on the trees, but like I visited the other day and they've built like a little barn out of like an old like theatre set, and they've got like a really good wood burner in there, and it's just like someone's like been painting and drawing on the walls and stuff. And like yeah, the people there are like really solid and like really hardworking, and they've been like nailing it with like all the ecology stuff. Like there was like one or two people working on the ecology things, and like they basically bought the woodland like a few more months because like doing all of the bat stuff with like the Barbastille bats and proving that they were there. Yeah, do I have a link to the maps that show the route of HS2? Not one that I can give you, but if you go on their website,
it's just been posted in the chat.
Oh, it's been posted.
Yeah.
Nice. Wonderful. Yeah. Yeah, their website is actually really good for like knowing what works they're doing when and where, and like knowing where we need to be as activists and kind of forward planning. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, this is really lovely. It's been nice to talk to people. Any other questions? No. Yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit more about like Kirkstall Valley Farm and like why they've decided to do this like series of webinars. Like it's just, yeah, it seems really like a nice idea, like out of the blue sort of thing.
Yeah, I've joined the steering group. So they're like a CSA, so they're a community startup agricultural project to benefit the community directly. So yeah, they're kind of like all crowdfunded or self-funded. They're gonna hire a grower this year and then distribute like veg boxes to the local area, but they're in conjunction with Kirkstall Valley Development Trust, which is another community project which is working towards creating more biodiversity, wildlife and community organisation in Kirkstall. So they do like 3 days a week, they give out food packages, they do a lot of stuff like kids clubs and looking after kids like when families can't during the day. That's not like possible at the moment, but that usually happens. So what I'm kind of like working with them on is like doing more stuff to kind of link them to the Roots project, as well as stuff for people who have to shield or distance to still have some integration into like ecology and environmental teachings for the time being. Yeah, so we're kind of like using that as a fundraising platform for yeah, refugees and migrants living at Abigail House at the moment.
That sounds really cool. Yeah. So my friends like trying to get a bit of land at the minute and like start something, and just like seeing all of these other projects happen. It's like, oh, we could do something like that one day, and like, I don't know, just grow really cool things. Don't know. I think as far as we got with growing stuff on this campaign was like we went through like two different evictions of this like tomato plant being moved from like like bit of land to bit of land, and then it ended up on like, oh, this like broken canal boat, and it was like, oh, tomatoes there now, cool. And then we moved before we could actually get the plants. But I'd really love to like actually have some stability and grow stuff at some point. It'd be really fun.
Yeah, I think it's really important, especially like with stuff like HS2 happening, like stuff that's good for the like land as well, and not like just relying on like mass agriculture.
Yeah. Yeah, like being able to feed your community is such like an empowering thing, and being like it's like one more step away from being like sufficient on the state. Like even if you go like skipping, like you're still like living off of like the ashes of capitalism, I guess, in some way. Or like even if like, yeah, even if like you're not like buying stuff all the time, like it's still like, it's just like one further step removed, and one extra skill that you can kind of bring to this fight, I guess, like being able to grow stuff. Yeah. Oh, this has been really lovely. It's good to catch up and stuff as well. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for taking part, and thanks to everyone who's come to join in. Definitely, like, if there'll be weekly webinars for the next like 2 months, a bit over that probably, on the same time every Tuesday, with like different activists and ecologists. So yeah, if you want to get some more insight into some other things, like, definitely come to those.
Nice. I'm just going to post like the 3 website links that if people want more information, they're like the 3 websites that have stuff on. So there's stophs2.org, which has like just like a lot of facts and like a lot of like information, and like everything's like really well researched and like cited, and there's like a few articles. Like the h2rebellion.earth, which is more like the kind of like XRE side, like they like post about loads of actions that are happening. There's like links to all of the camps on there as well, and like how you can get involved and like donate and stuff. And then tnar.com, which is like pretty new. They're looking for people to like start writing bits and pieces for it. And it's more kind of about like, what if it's not about a railway, then talking about like the wider issues and like what it's actually about. And there's some fun bits of art on there too. What is my Instagram? I'm not going to tell you that, I'm sorry. Yeah. All of those things above though, they all have Instagram. You can get involved with the campaign. Like just, yeah, literally just search like the hashtag stop HS2 and then loads of stuff comes up. Yeah, lots of love, everybody. Right.
Yeah, see, I've posted a link for the other webinars as well, and the fundraiser page.
Nice. All right, I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna go get some food. See you all soon.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Bye.